Welcome to Practical Psychology Podcast, episode 11. My name is Joseph, one of the co-hosts.
And my name is Allison. I'm a co-host, and I'm so excited to introduce you to our next guest, Yemisi Ajayi-Rorick, fondly known as Misi, who is a compassionate therapist and counselor, as well as the founder of Cherished Pathways Counselling Services in Alberta, Canada. Missy holds a Master of Counselling degree from City University of Seattle and has extensive experience supporting individuals and families through addiction recovery, trauma, grief and loss, divorce, and major life transitions. She also offers faith-based Christian counseling for those seeking healing through a spiritual lens. Welcome, Missy.
Thank you.
Missy, we are very excited to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I'm glad to finally be on here.
Yeah, the first question many viewers and even myself want to ask you is about your passion and your extensive work in addictions and counseling. Can you tell us a little bit about what drew you into that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I was drawn into this addiction work basically from just realizing that addiction is just not a weakness like most people think about, that it's just a weakness or you're lazy. People um grieving something. People are going through a lot of pain. And like Governor says, it's not about the addiction, it's about what's the story or what's the pain behind the addiction, right? Because in my work, as I start to realize that, oh my goodness, there's a lot of, even from me coming to a place of self-awareness about the ways I have coped and the strategies that I've used, which some of them might not be substances, but they can be addictive, a way to survive, a way for the brain to survive. I think that was what really drew me into, working alongside people, um, you know, helping them rebuild and work on recovery from substances.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Missy. You mentioned recovery,
Yeah.
and many people believe that recovery just means quitting substances.
Mhm.
How do you define it?
That's a great question. Recovery is more than just being sober, right? It's about healing the whole person as a whole, their mind, their body. Like I said, the addiction, to be addicted to anything, not even substances, is about numbing a pain. It's a coping strategies that we develop over the years after, being exposed to different traumatic experiences or stresses, right? So it's about looking at the whole person as a whole, not just focus on sobriety, right? True recovery includes rebuilding the person's self-worth, repairing connection, because a lot of time connections are lost, learning healthier coping strategies, and finding meaning again in life. Because if you've been exposed to a lot of trauma as a child or in your early years, right? Or even as an adult, you learn to numb that pain because mental health is something that we don't really want to talk about or deal with. Nobody really teaches us how to, cope, right? Or how to manage our feelings. So a lot of time people turn to bottles, and so looking at what led to the addiction, what is the story behind that? What is the pain, the alcohol or the food addiction or whatever it is, what is that pain that is numbing? Is it the pain of attachment, wounded attachment style? Is it the pain of rejection? Is it whatever it is? It's just looking at that whole holistic view to be able to walk along people and help them to see that, okay, this is a coping strategies for this behavior. Now that you've created awareness and you're aware that this is what this is doing, let's explore what works now. Let's look into what recovery means for you. And it's different from everyone, right? My recovery journey is different from your recovery journey or anyone else's recovery journey. So it's about finding that whole person.
You see, here's wonderful. You mentioned so many good points here. I want to stay with one point that you make about the story of addictions. Because
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes people have this stigma when they come in, addiction is the entirety, 100% of the life.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, actually, the person is big. Addiction is not
Mm-hmm.
often 100%.
Yeah.
We have to break that story to
Yeah.
start with,
Yeah.
to reduce
Yeah.
the stigma.
Yeah. And that's the stigma that we avoid, that people try to avoid, right? The shame, right? They carry the guilt, like, I shouldn't do this. This is not right. Especially if you feel like, you're privileged enough in life to have some things like, I should know better. I should not be addicted to
Mhm.
this. So there's a lot of fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of living without substances even becomes, you know, even after sobriety can become, because they're so used to it, sometimes it can become so unfamiliar. Loneliness is also a real one. Sometimes they also feel like no one understands their struggle, right? And
Yeah.
that's why, again, looking into that story and the challenges that this person as a whole is facing is not to fix it, but is to create awareness, is to help them understand it and help them build better coping strategies. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, here. So, Missy, here, when you are supporting individuals, couples, or families going through that recovery process, especially in the early recovery, what are some of the common challenges?
Yeah, some common challenges are just, lots of self-identity, loneliness. Um, Early recovery is very triggering because there's still a lot of, especially if you've gone into detox or you've gone into detox, there's still substances in the body, the brain is still trying to figure it out. Um, there's a lot of challenges that early recovery looks like almost impossible to some people sometimes because the relapse rate is high. One of the things I do is the early stages of change assessment. And that is a great motivational interviewing that are strategies that I've used to say, okay, seems like there is a desire for change here. You've made some action to actually go to detox, to do this, to do that. So let's explore what is, and like relapse is not a failure. I always tell people to relapse is not a failure. It just means that whatever we've used in the past is not working and we need to find something else that works for you, right?
I love that emphasis on how it's not really linear and
Yeah.
there's sort of an acceptance piece of yeah, like if there is a relapse, let's manage it instead of adding more guilt or more shame to that happening. I'm curious, uh, you do work with a lot of different groups, but I'm curious about the young men that you work with in recovery programs. What do you notice about their needs specifically compared to maybe adults that are a little later in
Oh
life?
yeah, that's a great question. Um, oh, the young men are going through a lot. Like right now, I work in a recovery program for 18 to 28, I believe. And a lot of it is just identity. Some of it is just self-identity. A lot of them are gone into substances at a before they even turn 18, right? And this is a way of either wanting to belong or to cope with a traumatic experience or events that may have happened, right? They're trying to figure out their independency, they're trying to figure out their career, relationship, and the flip side is that they always have incredible, being a younger person in recovery, I always say you have an incredible resilience and ability to change quickly once they feel supported and they're in the right environment and they are actually, focused on the recovery that they desired or they want, right? So that makes a lot of difference between another person who has done it for so long, right? So I think the biggest piece is just when, teenagers struggle with a lot of who am I? What do I want to be? And if they don't have a safe place to process that, to walk through that challenges of who am I, who I don't want to be, who do I want to be, who don't I want to be, and there's trauma involved, then obviously it's almost like if you have a baby and they need to walk, but you're not encouraging them to walk, right? Your mother keeps putting the baby down and say, hey, stop, don't work. But it stunts their growth. That's what traumatic experiences does, right? It doesn't allow them to develop and to understand who they really are.
Mm. Okay, so there's a lot of like self-discovery work.
Yes.
And then how about with adults later in life? What are some of the things that you're more focused on?
I believe with adults, it's just more focused on, and that's where my motivational interview and the stages of change really comes in. Because for some adults, sometimes there's a desire to care for a child or to make those changes because of this important relationship in their life that is now so significant. Because sometimes there's really little hope of I'm doing this for myself sometimes, right? So to have that relationship, to have that motivation is really, really good. And also to be able to say, I want to be the person that, this person I admire. Sometimes maybe they have like a father who never did that, or an uncle, or that. It's just helping them to discover what that means to them and how they want to go with that. Because a lot of time there's that struggle of guilt and shame, like I've messed up, I've done a lot of things, but I do really want to change for my relationship to be better. I do really want to change to be a better person, to be able to hold down a job, to be able to drive or whatever it is.
Mm.
Very
Yeah.
interesting, Missy. You talk
Mhm.
about identity because we all know substance use or any sort of addictions can erode or take away a big part of the life
Mhm.
and the loss of identity here.
Mhm.
And I want to ask you a little bit more, Missy, about the relapse process. You
Yeah.
mentioned recovery here is not just a one shot, get it perfect. It is a
Mhm.
marathon process here. How do you discuss about relapse and education with your clients?
That's a great question. So usually I'll start with, okay, let's identify triggers, right?
Mhm.
Let's identify coping strategies that works for you. And even doing this, it doesn't mean that it's almost like when you go to a doctor and they give you a medication, it's for you to try and go back and say, this works and it doesn't work, right? So I
Mhm.
explained to them that even though we're developing these coping strategies and you're practicing them, it's your job. Well, the goal is for you to be able to identify really what is working and what is not working. And relapse is real. Relapse is real. It's almost like you are being faced with it's like if somebody give me very delicious red velvet cake right now and tells me not to eat it, like it's gonna be hard, right? So it's like, you're literally avoiding the temptation, and sometimes it's hard to avoid that temptation. Sometimes we're in the same environment that we have to go back to. So even though some young men go to recovery center, do all this programming, environment also matters a lot. So when we look at the whole social biology of an individual, I look at the environment, I look at their past history, their family history, I look at all that stuff, right? To be able to give them this holistic education around relapse. Like, okay, if you've had parents, or if this is in your blood, if this is what could come up, and this is what recovery may look like for you. If you're struggling with impulse control, FASD, ADHD, all
Mhm.
these other current, like other mental health challenges that could, impact your recovery, it's significant for you to be aware of how that may, right? Because if you're struggling with HDAD, impulse control is huge, right? So maybe the risk of temptation to drink is higher. Maybe the risk of using is higher. So just recognizing that. Also, when I look at the environment, recognizing how the significant impact of an environment is huge, because if a lot of people go back to the same place, like I said, and just expect not to eat the velvet cake or not to drink if you're still hanging out with the same friends or in the same neighborhood, the same, So again, sometimes I know that I can't move people out of their environment, or they can't suddenly move out of their environment, is to create awareness around that and to say, how do we mitigate this? What are your options, right? Are there any other, healthy support, help them find healthy support even within that environment? Does that make sense? Yeah. So we just keep going so recovery, relapse prevention for me is building that holistic relapse plan to say, this is what your relapse prevention look like. Your hobbies, maybe you like horse riding, maybe you love playing music, maybe you're into some kind of spiritual, indigenous spirituality, or whatever it is to find something that helps you to manage and to build a healthier way of living, rather than using substances to numb the pain. Of course, we deal with the pain too. We look into what's causing the pain, how do we manage this pain. I validate a lot, because a lot of time people in addiction a lot of us minimize that pain, right? Where we're just like, oh, it's not a big deal. So there's a lot of recovery where I'm also looking at, that pain of addiction, that pain that is causing that, and helping them to process it through, um, choose CBT. I use CBT or CPT a lot of the time to say, okay, what is the stop points? What are you doing about it? So it's really, I try to look at it as holistic when I look at relapse prevention. I know I'm talking about relapse prevention, but when I look at it, I try to look at the whole picture in terms of mental health challenges, family history, environment, all those things, support systems. They make relapse easier to manage, right? Once a person is aware of their individual obstacles or challenges that could make relapse more permanent.
Yeah,
Missy, you bring up a very good point here. You mentioned so many complexities, so many different items, tools.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to speak to a professional like yourself.
Yes.
It'll be very difficult for an individual to keep all these checklists. It'll be impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to echo that and say I really love the way that you spoke about it so holistically. And again, that you're really focusing on the relapse prevention, because it's really coming out that recovery really is like preparing for the inevitable situation, so that when you find yourself relapsing, you're not, you already have a plan in place. Also, I wanted to, you mentioned earlier that trauma stunts growth.
Yes.
What role does trauma play in addiction and recovery?
When we go through trauma, like we know, we go through this freeze, fawn, and flight responses. Our brain is in that heavy way to protect the body, right? So imagine a child growing up in a home where there's a lot of domestic violence, or maybe there is neglect, there is lack of, support, or it's just a huge family. So these are all traumatic experiences that can make a child feel isolated, make them feel lonely. And as they grow older, and they're starting to find that substance become something to really numb that pain and escape the memories of, a father yelling, or a parent yelling, or beating a child up, or whatever it is, right? We often discover that the roots most of the time, the root is not the substance. The root is more what's underneath, right? What is underneath the surface? I tell my client, I use that phrase a lot. Like, let's dig into what's underneath the surface. We see the surface. The surface is the substances. is this DOC that you're using regularly? Maybe it's cocaine, maybe it's whatever it is. And how do we go below that to see what is underneath it, right? And that's how traumatic experiences and events that happen in our life, stunts the growth, where, a child starts to feel like, I really got to belong, but I'm so not used to talking to people. And these peers of my friends are really cool. So they drink, whatever they do, and they join them. Or sometimes the substance even start from the house, right? Where father comes home high or parent comes home high, and they're yelling or throwing things, and the child is able to find a bottle to also take. So all these traumatic experiences just has a lot of significant impact on how a child is able to cope and manage, because as a child, you're still learning coping strategies. You're still building, right? Your safe environment helps you to flourish, right? But if the case is otherwise, like I've listed, then all those traumatic experiences just kind of stunts the growth, where the only option is to seek a way out sometimes, right?
Escape.
Yeah. Escape. That's the right word. Yeah, escape.
In a way, Missy, you are saying for the viewers and the public is the substance or the addictions oftentimes is just the scapegoat. We have to look beyond the addiction, and oftentimes we will find trauma is causing it actively. And without resolving the trauma, the addiction will continue to be the problem.
Definitely. As a mental health therapist in the program that I work with, even though the program focused on addiction recovery, my job as a mental health provider is to say, hey, we really have to look at your mental health challenges. We really have to look at your diagnosis. We really have to look at what's underneath the surface. Because the more we avoid it, we can have all these great DBT strategies, coping strategies, numbing it, avoiding it. But if there's still a lot of grief, pain, relationship being destroyed relationship, there's higher potential for relapse is what I've realized. Yeah.
Yeah. And Missy here, we have a lot of clinicians and counselors who work in the hospital. Oftentimes on the phone line here, it is not the individuals with addictions, but their family members calling. How do you normally support those family members or the loved ones who are very concerned?
Yeah, I think for number one thing I do is just listen and, offer a lot of empathy and validation. I have moms, parents calling, sometimes there's tears over the phone. There's, just this as a parent, you want to help your child succeed. You want to give them the right tools. So it's really, really hard. So one of the things I listen, I offer no judgment, and I advise them to don't judge, right? Set healthy boundary and do education around, setting healthy boundary, educate yourself around the specific addiction, this DOC, and what pain it may be numbing for your child or your spouse or whoever it is. And then I encourage professional support too, right? For them as an individual, not just for the child, or for the person in addiction, for you coping with that. Because a lot of time, families can come up with their own guilt and shame too, right? Where a parent can feel like, did I do enough? Did I not provide enough? Oh, maybe it's because I'm divorced. Maybe it's because of my this. Maybe it's because of that. And they take on that blame and the shame. And if you're in that place where you are drowning in depression and you're drowning in the pain of this guilt, you're not able to provide the support that this child or this person needs, right? It's almost like when they tell us in the airplane that you put on your own oxygen mask first, right? So that you can help the other person. So I tell them, put on your own oxygen mask, see a therapist, do some self-care. There's a group of support. Find supportive people who are going through similar things and see if that can be an avenue where it's safe to share, to continue to heal through this while they support you. the recovery is possible, but it's a journey. So it's important that loved ones walk this journey with their, with their addictive family members.
That's an excellent point here because the family members are walking this journey
Yeah,
and they can only control themselves because the
true.
individuals with the addiction wanting to seek help is outside of the control.
Mhm.
It is a mission impossible for them.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's hard because, like I said, families take on a lot. They see you, they keep they
Mhm.
keep rescuing this person. They want to
Yeah.
rescue, they want to fix it, they want to change things. If they could do anything to make sure this person, their loved one, is healthy and out of recovery and making better choices, they would do it. However, a lot of time the decision is up to that person.
Yeah.
That's something I also tell them, that this is, you can support, but you cannot make decisions, because I have
Mhm.
people will say, hey, my mom forced me to come to this program, or my this. So you can support your loved one, but you can't force them. And the way you
Mhm.
support them sometimes might even be setting really healthy boundary that it's painful for you to set, right? Or it's painful for them, right? However, they
Mhm.
need to walk through their own journey.
I can imagine when you're helping them or encouraging them to set boundaries, it can feel really hopeless for whether it's the actual like person struggling with the addiction or their family members. So how do you keep hope alive for both sets of clients?
Yeah, I think for me, I just remind them that recovery is possible, right? And I highlight the progress that they've been doing already. If there's any progress, because a lot of time we're hard on ourselves. Even when we're not in addiction, we see the negative part of ourselves first, or the negative things we're doing first. We judge ourselves. So it's to identify those small goals that have been accomplished, whether it's sober for a week or 2 weeks or 10 weeks. And that's why I love the NAs and the AAs and all those programs, because they do celebrate that. Hey, you're 3 months over. Yeah, here's a keychain. Here's something for us to celebrate together, right? So it's about helping them to see those little small goals. And sometimes it's as simple as saying you don't have to figure it out today, right? You don't have to figure out forever today, because a lot of time people want to focus on, I want to be recovering so I can do this, so I can do that. How about this present moment, right? One of my favorite book is The Power of Now. And it just, I don't know if you guys have read it, but I think it has taught me to be present, to always be in the present moment, to say, what is coming up for you right now? Do you want to work on right now? What are the strategies that is not working? What is the emotion? Identify your emotion, identify even your physical symptoms, right? Sometimes I'm watching a boy be restless and all that. It's important to say, okay, you are doing a lot. Last week, when you sat here or when we were working, you were fidgeting, you know, you looked like you couldn't concentrate. But today, we've actually done a walk and you've just been talking and smiling. That's the progress, right? How does that feel like for you? How does this recovery process feels like for you? Right? Because if we focus too much on the outcome, yes, we want the outcome, we can miss the little moments, the little progress that is being made, whether it's even choosing to eat healthier, right? Yeah.
Power of now, the process and the outcome here, Missy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that book so much because it grounds me all the time. Every time I'm having anxiety and there's future focus or there's past focus, which is what the body and the brain tries to do sometimes, right? Going back either to the future, going back to the past or the future, we have the ability to say, okay, I'm right now. That's why I love grounding techniques. Look at the five things around you. Even if it's colors, let's identify all the blues in the room. Let's do this. We bring our brain to the very present moment to help us to say, okay, what is the next step I need to go further in life, right? or to continue this recovery process.
And Missy, every single day you're walking into your office, supporting clients with addiction and trauma. And we all know counseling and psychotherapy is beyond a job. It is a lifestyle. You live and breathe it yourself. What are some of the inspiration for yourself, your family, through all this work here?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, it's just seeing the changes, the little, even as I described, sometimes it's hard for clients to see. I had a client who, for example, would be easily angry. There's a lot of just anger, tantrum kind of behavior, but to watch him to be able to control his emotion when somebody's pissing him off, for lack of a better word, or to watch him be able to say, you know what, I'm just gonna do my DBT. I'm just gonna, this is pushing me I do a lot of window of tolerance. This is pushing me beyond my window of tolerance. So I'm just gonna take a break. I just need to walk out of this right now. Or to say, to actually advocate for themselves is huge. Because like I said, some of them haven't learned how to advocate for themselves, how to talk about their feelings. So I think seeing those little changes really, gives me joy. Seeing someone who they thought had no future starting to think about, okay, I could go back to school, I could do this, rebuilding family connections. So sometimes in addiction, we break a lot of family connection because we have a lot of impulse control. We hurt people, but seeing people say, oh, one of the things we do is letters to self-forgiveness, right? If somebody chooses that path, to walk that path and seeing the connection rebuilding, it's going to take time, right? But at least you start the process of rebuilding that connection and, discover joy in simple things like nature, music, or relationships is very significant. So those are the things that keep me going because yes, there are a lot of, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna say it's always bed of roses. And some people you try, you do all this holistic thing, and they still choose to go back into addiction, or they still choose to. It just means for me sometimes it hurts, but sometimes it means that stages of change is still maybe in pre-contemplation, and they just need to walk through that slower or come back for an opportunity to actually take action. So that's all about meeting people where they are. But again, when I look at why I do this job, is just to see those changes, those little changes that I can highlight and say, you know what, what do you think about the progress you've made? And that it makes my work very fulfilling. Let me say that. And to also just to add on, because they're also young men, and men are told, a lot of both my clients are young men only, and a lot of men are told not to share their, well, boys tough up, right? Be tough, be a boy. They've been told be a boy, don't show emotions, right? To see them starting to show emotions and actually talk about emotions is like, woo, that's great. Thank you for asking that
Yeah,
question.
Missy, you point out a very important thing here because according to research, it's very clear. Emotion is part of the overall intelligence and decision or even critical thinking.
Mhm.
For example, the research of patients who have the area of the brain damage of
Mhm.
the emotions, they
Mhm.
actually become more illogical
Mhm.
rather than more logical, according to the research rather than the myth.
Yeah, yeah. The emotion is so powerful because the whole impulse control or not, it's all about the emotions, how we are regulating our emotions, right? How we are allowing ourselves to be sad, happy, or whatever that emotion is without judging it, right? Or even angry. It's just all about understanding it and understanding why, right? And how to manage it. I tell people all the time, no emotion is bad. All your emotions are really, really good. The way of God put them there for a reason, to warn you, to guide you, to tell you, run for danger, or to be sad when something happens. Imagine if somebody dies or your friend dies and you're like, hey, high five, and you're laughing. That would not sit right? So we have these emotions for a reason. So even guilt and shame, I always say there's a reason why it's there. It's provoking something within you that you need to pay attention to. And sometimes it's not to fix it, it's just to be aware of it and to say, okay, how do I navigate it? That's all it is, right? We don't fix emotions, understanding it. Yeah.
And Missy here, the viewer also have a questions, and you are a certified Christian counselor.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about faith-based counseling compared to non-faith-based counseling? What are the similarities and the differences?
Oh yeah, that's really good. I believe that our faith grounds us in whatever faith or religion people practice. And so for me, even when people disclose that, okay, I go for sweat, I'm an indigenous, or people say, hey, I'm a Christian, I believe in God, or they say whatever they mention, I find it, if they allow me, then I ask, hey, with your permission, is it okay if we look into what does Buddha say about this? What does your faith say about this? Because a lot of time I find that when people have that, it's another technique that I can bring into therapy to help them feel grounded, to help them feel connected to a superpower that is guiding or leading them in the direction that they want to go, right? And sometimes it opens up a lot of opportunity for me to be able to do a different kind of work where we start talking about, your faith, my faith. If we're the same faith, I share my experience in faith. Even recently, last week, I was sharing my spiritual beliefs or faith with the parents and say, this is what it does for me. It grounds me. So if this child is saying they have this faith, or they are saying this, or they went to this true meditation, let's explore it. Let's look into it. Let's let them get a spiritual leader that understand that faith to explain it to them, to be able to guide them through so that they can find some meaning. Because in life, we're always looking for meaning, right? Most of us are looking, what is the meaning of life? What is the meaning? What is the purpose? Until the end, we don't know. So something helps us stay focused. Something helps us say, okay, fine, there is a God, or there is, something, a higher power above there that helps me to believe that he's guiding me, or he's protecting me, or he's, so for me, to answer your question without going off and on, I believe that my faith, bringing my spirituality or my faith into counseling, when people want to, I don't force it on anyone, is optional. When people want to, it's just a new, unique technique that I find is a good tool for me to use in therapy session to be able to help people navigate the challenge of, and sometimes we compare it. Like I say, okay, faith and fact, faith and psychology, like there's a difference. Let's collaborate. Let's see how it works together, right? And one of my favorite one is I use CBT a lot. And for me as a Christian, even looking into that, I look at what the Bible says about our thoughts and our beliefs. And that's what CBT says. So I kind of collaborated. I'm like, okay, you say you believe in the Bible. Let's look into what your thoughts and your belief says in the Bible. And this is what it says. As you think, so you are. So what does that mean? If you think you're a fish, that means you're a fish. You're going to behave like a fish. You're going to eat like a fish. You're going to act like a fish. Whatever that is, right? So they were like, oh, and sometimes people are like, oh, yeah, I've never put that together before, where I'm looking at what my faith says, or I also do a lot of indigenous, so I can give a lot of example from indigenous little ceremony that I know, because some of the boys I work with are also from there. The whole sweat ceremony, the whole release and the prayer they do, just, releasing that pain, it just elevates. Oh, I could talk forever about spirituality, but I'm gonna stop. But it's a different tool that you can bring to therapy, where you can help people understand what cognition is working and what faith, and combine it. So that's what I'm just gonna say.
Mm. So good. So good. It really highlights how you like to meet clients where they're at
Hmm.
and build your treatment around that. It's
Yeah,
such a great way of conceptualizing that. So thank you so much.
you're welcome. Thank you.
So, Missy, we are very happy to have you today.
Yeah.
And there's so many questions and topics we want to ask you more. And we would love to have you back for the next episode. But just the viewer and the public and the fellow staff and clinicians,
Hmm.
if they want to have more further questions, how do they contact you?
Oh, that's a great one. I started I work with Wong, an associate right now. So if you can get hold of Joseph, you can get hold of me. I also started a small private practice on the side where I call it Cherished Pathways. If you Google Cherished Pathways, you should be able to find me. Basically, is a way of looking at life where I have looked at it from that lens, and I feel like I can walk along people from looking at the pathways in your life that has led you to where you are right now, whether they're good, whether positive or negative pathways, again, all the traumatic experiences, to look at it from that perspective to create a new pathway that you want to go into now. So that is my approach right now, where I meet people to say, okay, we've looked at your different path of life, where which pathway do you want to go, because we know those pathways are not serving you anymore, and we know this one is serving you, so let's celebrate that, let's go there. So the whole idea of that is just to help people meet them where they are. So that's where you can find me. I do that usually evenings and weekend as permitted, and again, I'm on Wong Counselling, Cherished Pathways, and yeah, or Misi.
Cherished Pathway Counselling.
Yeah,
We will include the link in the description and comments here.
thank you.
And wonderful speaking with you today here, Missy and
Thank you
Allison.
so much for having me. It's
Thank
been
you
an
so much for
honor.
your time.